Might do better than what I got. How's that for a start?
That's pretty good. Pretty funky.
Okay, well, I'd like to welcome you all here today. I'd like to thank the Nanaimo North Library and Darby and Ginger. If I can get this volume down. I'd like to thank Murray, my EV man and subatomic particle physicist, for working the rest of this. And we'll get started. There it is. I'm not going to do the reading right away. I'm going to talk about the entire history of the South Pacific, right?
Yeah, ooh.
Is that, that's the way I do things. So there you go, 165 million square kilometers, 1/2 of the Earth's water, 1/3 of the Earth's surface area, more than the total land mass of the Earth combined, 25,000 islands, 10,000 of which are inhabited. So this won't take long. So if you were going to think in your mind and close your eyes and dream of one noun, one word in your youthful exuberance that you thought of when somebody mentioned the South Seas, what would the word be?
Paradise.
Go to the head of the class, Professor. It would be paradise. Geography determines climate, climate determines culture. And if, in paradise, with all of its fringing reefs and white sand and coral and palm trees and everything else that goes on there, and lagoons and atolls, you thought of one place in the South Seas that was paradise, that was a paradigm for paradise. Which island or islands would that be?
Tahiti.
Who said that? Tahiti? Tahiti.
Everybody said Tahiti.
Tahiti. You're ahead of me. So there's Maria. That's Tahiti. That's Tahiti.
Wow.
That's Tahiti.
That's nice.
A little something for the girls, a little something for the boys. And the whole Southern Sea thing didn't exist in our high schools, at least when I went to high school, or public schools, until this guy came along, Vasco Nunez de Balboa. I'm dropping my Maori things. And the thing about Balboa that we learned was that he discovered the Southern Sea in 1513. Before then, it didn't exist, nothing was happening. And he did it deliberately. Now, what we didn't learn was that he sort of accidentally stumbled on it while he was killing off the Cacique tribes to get their gold. And we also didn't learn that Francisco Pizarro, who was the Peruvian conquistador, chopped his head off 8 years later. Okay. But he did name this the Southern Sea, and the South Seas is defined as anything south of the Panama Isthmus as Mar del Sur, Southern Sea. The guy that came along 8 years later, around the Cape, I forget which one, was named Magellan, and he called it Mar Pacifico because, not because there was peace there, but because the weather that he encountered was peaceful. Very profound. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to outline how Tahiti became the epicenter of European mental paradise. And then I'll show you how wrong it was. Okay, so who knows who this guy is? It's getting difficult now. So this is a man named Thomas Hobbes. Okay. And in 1651, this is the zeitgeist of the time, right? This is the prevailing theme of the century that this man lived in, that the life of man was solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. And everybody woke up in the morning and they knew it. And he had some form of social contract, but you really didn't have a say. So he was the 1984 guy of 1651, essentially. And then something very magical happened that nobody had anticipated in 1704. A Scottish sailor, it was actually a pirate, I mean it was a pirate boat, was cast away on Masapuero, which is an island in the Andes Islands off the coast of Chile. Except that's wrong. He wasn't cast away. He asked to be let off because he couldn't stand the captain. And the captain, who couldn't stand Selkirk, was more than happy to oblige. And they gave him a flintlock and an axe and a hatchet, and off he went. And he was there for 5 years. And every morning he would climb up the long mountain, the path, because I know because it's hard because we've done it. And he'd look out over to the west to look for a boat. And for 5 years, no boat came. And then when the boat finally came, it was a friend of his who was now captaining another ship and took him back to Great Britain. He was rescued. And then something more marvelous happened. Daniel Defoe used his story to create one of his own called Robinson Crusoe. And that hit Thomas Hobbesian zeitgeist right smack dab in the forehead, because people in London were lined up outside the doors of the coffee houses just to get a glimpse of the book, but never mind to hear a reading from the pages of it. Okay, they were fascinated with this castaway story. And the castaway story is actually the first chapter in my book as well, because it has to be. The thing that Daniel Defoe did that Alexander Selkirk never experienced was Daniel Defoe gave him a playmate, Nan Friday, who would forever be so grateful to him that he would do anything he asked for the rest of his life until he got rescued. And that sort of served as the theme for the subjugation of everybody else in the Pacific that met the Europeans subsequently. Right? So who knows who this guy is? Okay? I don't expect you to know this stuff. So this man was a musician in Switzerland, giving you hints, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And he did not coin the term noble savage, but it came out of him in his works. And he came up with a very radical idea, which was the zeitgeist of that time, that man was born free, and in his natural state, he was more amazing than in any social group he could function in. Having said that, Rousseau is also the guy that came up with the penultimate social contract, which did not include monarchy, by the way. So it was kind of a breath of fresh air. And he set the stage for the revolution. So fomenting in the background of what I'm going to tell you happened next was this liberation kind of attitude that was slowly invading Thomas Hobbes' idea of what people's lives should be like. And then it all came to pass, because in 1767, Samuel Wallis parked the Dolphin in Matavai Bay in Tahiti. He's the first European boat to do that. And a bunch of funny things happened in Matavai Bay. The first thing that happened is every canoe on the beach came out to meet the Dolphin. And frisky as they were, one boat load of Tahitian men started pelting the Dolphin with stones. Well, it didn't go well because Wallace used grape shot and cannon to blow it out of the water. And then he made a mistake. He sent his carpenters to shore to saw in half the other 80 canoes that were on the beach. And the mistake wasn't doing that. The mistake was staying a little longer than they should, because the Tahitian maidens came out of their houses, and they had things that they were curious about. And after a while, all the nails, or a good chunk of them from the Dolphin, ended up on shore, having disappeared in exchange for certain favors that proved to be why Tahiti became the paradise that it became. So Wallace got out of there just in time before his boat fell apart. And then a year later, on the other side of Tahiti, in Tahiti, it was the French turn. So you have all these deprived French sailors who'd been at sea for 2 years on bougainvillees, it's named after Bougainvillea, or the flower's named after him. The Boudeuse came into port. Same thing happened, except slightly different. A smiling Tahitian girl climbed onto the quarterdeck and dropped her skirt like a gauntlet. So one of the commenters at the time said if Botticelli's Venus was standing beside this girl and had done the same thing, no one would have noticed. So there's a theme that's developing every time a European ship sails into a Tahitian port. And then next year, James Cook rolls into town. He comes into Matavai Bay, and he's charged distinctly with the task of measuring and monitoring the transit of Venus. His crew sort of took it literally. And this was his painter on the voyage. This is Thomas Hodge, and Hodges, he didn't quite get the scenery right. You know, he was still pining for England, as it were. And then 8 years after that, and basically the same thing happened with Cook's crew, right? It was hard to get them back on the boat. But this was the one that broke the back. Okay, in 1788, Bligh, who was commissioned to bring breadfruit to the slave colonies in the Caribbean, brought the Bounty into harbor, and his crew was a little more anticipatory of what they were going to find, and this is what happened. I don't have volume, Marie, but that's okay.
Yeah, just turn it, hold it.
We doing that or not? Oh, yeah. That's Tarita Taripaya. Okay, I'll tell you about her in just a minute. She meets somebody very famous. Does anybody know who that was? Let's see. 3 movies, Mutiny on the Bounty, one 1935. This one's 1962. The last one was 1984 with Mel Gibson. It doesn't count. So who's the guy? Marlon Brando. So the interesting thing about the European invasion of Paradise is that the stories kept rebounding.